theme for this session is Nurturing Natural Gas Policies and Regulations. The theme for this session holds the key to the future of the business, as we know, and we have an array of some very seasoned professionals who will delve on the theme. But first, I call upon the distinguished session chair, Dr. B. Mohanty. Dr. B. Mohanty has nearly 40 years of professional experience of government service. He joined the Indian Economic Service in 1976 and held important positions in the Ministries of Agriculture, Finance, Consumer Affairs, and Petroleum and Natural Gas. He joined the Ministry of Petroleum and Natural Gas as Joint Financial Advisor, and in the next 14 years, he worked on oil and gas market reforms, including dismantling of the administered price mechanism and restructuring of the industry. He served as Director General of Petroleum Planning and Analysis Cell and Senior Advisor until his superannuation in 2012. Dr. Mohanty also served as Director on the boards of some stock exchanges and major oil PSUs. He was closely associated with many expert committees on petroleum pricing of oil companies, including the Kirit Parikh Committee. Dr. Mohanty holds a PhD in economics from Tokyo University of Agriculture, Japan, and Master of Science in Development Management from Glasgow Sea University, United Kingdom. Can we have a round of applause for our illustrious session chair? And I now invite the learned speakers for the session. Our first speaker is Sri Rajiv Sharma, CEO of Adani Gas Limited. Sri Rajiv Sharma is coming to the dais. Our next speaker is Sri Saurabh Kamdar, Director Energy and Natural Resources, CRISIL. Sri Saurabh Kamdar. Sri Ravinder Agarwal is our next speaker, Executive Director, GSPC Group. I welcome Mr. Agarwal. I now call the next speaker, Mr. Agarwal. I call upon the next speaker, Sri Rajesh Kumar Gupta. He's COO of Lanco Kondapalli Power Limited. Sri Rakesh Kumar Gupta. And the last speaker for this session, Sri R.M. Deshpande, Executive Director, NFL. Ladies and gentlemen, this is our session speakers and session chair in place for this last session for the conclave. I now hand over the session to the chair, Dr. Mohanty, with the request to kindly introduce the speakers and steer the session.
Distinguished co-panelists on the dais, the CEOs of the oil and gas industry, corporate leaders, experts, ladies and gentlemen. We have come to the end of the session, but I'll try to make it more interesting than the others. We all know that the gas sector is standing at almost like a crossroads. There are positive signals. There are also constraints which needs a combined effort of policymakers, regulators, as well as the industry. Before I call upon my co-panelists to initiate the discussion, I would like to give you a snapshot of the sector as well as the policy direction so that we can proceed in a planned manner. If you look at the natural gas pipelines sector, I'll confine only to natural gas pipeline and city gas distribution. If you look at the pipeline sector, today we have about 20 operating companies, not companies, 20 operating pipelines with a combined length of about 16 1,000 kilometers and a capacity of around 450 to 500 mm SCMD. My office just informed me that the throughput last year or the sale of natural gas was about 160. So therefore, the capacity utilization falls around 35 to 35%, one third. The PNGRB has already approved about 8 pipeline projects with a combined length of around 9,000 kilometers with a capacity of 530 MMSCMD. All these new pipelines are at different stages of construction. They are also facing a lot of challenges. We can discuss when you go through those specific cases. On CGD network, we have about 26 companies running 64 geographical areas in 16 states. Looks better than the natural gas pipelines. Today, there are about 30 lakh households connected with PNG, and there are about 40,000 inch kilometers of pipeline laid by the CGD companies. There are numbers, but if you compare with international, achievements, they really look minuscule. What are the problems? We have to go much beyond these figures. The CGD company's total sales is low, out of which the residential PNG, what the residents gets is only about 6.5% of the total. So rest is commercial and industrial sector and some transport sector is taking. Does it mean that PNG is not a preferred route of business? To have an answer, we should look at what other countries have done. The other countries have done much better. They started much earlier than us. So if you look at the figures, I have got some few figures, You'll be happy to know that in Japan it is 40%, only residential. Total sales of city gas distribution, 40% is accounted by residential. In US, 35%. Even in China, this is 20%. And there are all about 25-20%. So this shows that residential PNG is not really, a least preferred area. In fact, if you read all literature available, empirical as well as case studies, you will find that PNG is the core area of business for city gas, because it will be difficult to hold, particularly the industrial customers. Once the competition, the full-fledged competition sets in our economy, the industrial consumer can go to pipeline, can go somewhere. It's only that residential sector which has to be built. So we have a long way to go. So what are the challenges? I'll just give one figure, the US is at the forefront of natural gas sector, both in terms of growth, also in terms of regulation. So there are about 96, but this is Energy Information Administration, their EIA 2012 figure, 96% of all residences in US are attached to local distribution companies. And commercial, 65%, still better. But do you know industrial? Only 17% are with LDC. Rest are by third parties. So in our case, the problems are very well known. I don't have to repeat, but I'll just quickly glance through. One is gas availability. Because we started with domestic gas availability and the LNG was not coming in. So since the natural gas domestic production has fallen drastically, so that became a real critical issue. Second is pipeline connectivity. I'm putting in a sequence because if there is no natural gas, so pipeline won't be there. So natural gas availability, first one, then to take that natural gas to the CGD, you need a pipeline. Even if there is natural gas, even if there is a pipeline connecting to the CGD, the commercial aspect in India does not permit them to really operate optimally. Why? Because there are high local taxes. The taxation has to be looked into. How do you optimize the taxes so that, how do you rationalize the taxes so that there is optimum growth of city gas sector? Then there is a high last mile connectivity cost. Implicit also there are some taxes involved here, local taxes. And of course, all these put together, they have to compete against fuel, traditionally with LPG, now with furnace oil and naphtha, because oil price has gone down. So these are real issues. They're not really, you cannot remove them, by a stroke of a pen or something. You have to really work in a very concerted and combined manner to rationalize these kind of problems. But it looks like as if we are in front of us, there is a great opportunity. First is the falling gas prices in line with oil prices. There is a literature, they say that first oil price falls, and there is a lag of 6 months for gas price to adjust to oil price, because oil is a much bigger commodity, globalized commodity. So gas price always follows oil price, not vice versa. And in case of oil price, the oil prediction today, I was just reading IHS SERA, they say probably gas price $4 to $5 per MMBTU may remain for much longer period than what initially thought. It could be beyond medium term even. So there is a great opportunity now. So therefore the distinction or the gap between domestic price and the international price is getting blurred, is getting reduced day by day. Therefore now we need a government policy thrust to remove these bottlenecks. And there are number of positive signs coming out from the government. First with the new policy which was announced to boost domestic production, which is really a kind of a path breaking. We'll see how it works on the ground. Then for pipelines, we have been working on a PPP mode of financing of natural gas pipeline. So this is also on the works. Then now the smart cities and green corridors have been formulated, which has given the PNGRB, the opportunity to announce more and more CGD areas, how to synchronize with smart cities and the green corridors, and probably, hopefully, you will hear some announcements in coming days. What next? Next is CNG and LNG. Some kind of policy formulation, some kind of path ahead has to be brought out by government and the PNGRB. About PNGRB's regulations, I need not say in detail because I'll be taking much more time than my co-panelist. If you read the regulation, what are the basic principles of regulation? One thing that it should be predictable. Second is it should be stable. One need not change it frequently. Second is it should be predictable, because for investment to come into the sector, they need kind of a 15-20 years horizon, so that they know, okay, if something changes, the regulation or policy will change this way, not that way. So if you can predict your policy and regulations accurately, then obviously investment can come in. And third is, of course, adaptability, flexibility, with the dynamics of market, how the regulation can change. So this is also going on. Probably we are now at a stage, we are almost in a transition now. The regulations are all out. Between 2008 and 2010, almost all key regulations are there. So there are almost 5 and 6 years. There is experience of having these regulations and how they have worked on the sector. As usual, I take it as a neutral person, that almost all regulations have been challenged in the court by the companies, which is nothing strange, because most of the companies has gone through this stage. Initial there will be confusion, challenges. all will be settled, reconciled, then you'll have that, calm and quiet period of growth. So I'm hoping for that growth. With this kind of outline, let me stop my snapshot here, and then I go back to my chair and invite my co-panelists to tell you something more. Now I may invite Mr. Rajiv Sharma, CEO Adani Gas Limited. I am sure that he is not a stranger here, and like me, he also has a career of almost spanning 40 years, 4 decades, working all along in oil and gas industry, particularly on natural gas pipelines and CGD. Today, Sharma is responsible for Adani Group's initiatives in gas business and development of city gas distribution network across the country. You'll be happy to know that he was the founder director of IndianOil Adani Gas Private Limited, which has become a major player in PNGRB's scheme of things. This is a joint venture between IndianOil Corporation and Adani Gas Limited. They have a all India plan to spread CGD network. With experience of working in Middle East countries on various oil and gas projects, he was also associated with GAIL India Limited for 19 years in various capacities. As the founding managing director of IGL, he had the distinction of successfully implementing the prestigious CNG program in the early 2000s. So he has lot of feathers in his cap. He has also prepared and presented several papers relating to CGD projects, use of CNG as transportation fuel, and CNG program implementation in various prestigious national and international forums. He has been responsible for formation of a professional forum called Natural Gas Vehicles Association of India, NGVAI, for discussing and highlighting developments in technology, codes and standards and policies used. He is also associated with several professional bodies. Now may I invite Mr. Sharma to share his views with us.
Thank you very much. And I cordially thanks Indian Oil Corporation for inviting me today and speaking here. Now, the subject today for me to speak is nurturing natural gas with policies and regulations. Right. I'm very sure that before we get into it, we have been listening whole day today about the policies and about the demand and supplies and other things. I'll try to recap a bit, but not a whole of it. Today, the government focus is definitely on a huge push on infrastructure. Prime Minister in his speech has said we'll lay 15,000 kilometers of pipeline, of gas pipelines, some 1 crore of new domestic connections to be given, power plant to be coming on gas and things like that. This is the government focus on that, so that gives a great push. Availability, as regards the availability is concerned, whole lot of new pipelines, some 15,000 kilometers of pipeline to be laid. New LNG terminals are coming, and numbers are coming, like if you count maybe 20, 30 of them are coming. There's absolute no issue about the LNG terminals. You name it, and everywhere, every 20 kilometers or 30 kilometers of coastline probably will have one terminal coming.
Mr. Sharma, I just forgot to tell you, because it's my duty to put the timeline, So each of the panelists would have 10 minutes.
Sure, no, absolutely
and then
no problem.
maybe you can extend
Faster than that, sir.
More time to our audience.
It will be faster than that. We rest assured on that. Then on demand side, since so much of domestic connections will be coming, so there is a demand on CNG, PNG and others. And obviously, last but not the least, there's a whole lot of growing demand because of sensitivity towards the environment. So all this is pushing natural gas. The future of natural gas is pretty good, all this shows. Now, is the natural gas getting into the golden period because the prices are low today in the international market, and the gap between domestically produced gas vis-a-vis the regasified LNG bought on a spot is very low. And at times, even certain portion of domestic gas is coming more expensive than the RLNG today. I mean, certain wells of certain areas, our gas is more expensive. Importers who are importing LNG, they can have many options because there will be more terminals opening, and those terminals are coming on tolling. So anybody can sign up the quantity of bringing gas there and bring in. I have written few terminals like Ennon, Mundra and Damra, which I know for sure. There are others also coming. The Conclave coming, and some others are also coming terminals, like one, and a couple of them in Gujarat, a couple of them in Maharashtra, then a couple of them in Andhra Pradesh. So a whole lot of terminals are coming. Make in India campaign is pushing lots and lots of push on the manufacturing. I heard in the last session that the manufacturing is to pick up, but the manufacturing is pick up because Make in India campaign is going to push it up. So all these things are creating demand, I put it. But what is missing is that we want to show that what the gas demand will be in 2040 or 2025 or 2045 or 2050, then we must have a plan as to what infrastructure we need for those demand and how our network should look of gas, and how many terminals should be there for that network to take care of that scenario. What is happening today? Many states don't have the gas pipeline going across. Like Orissa is one state, like east of India, most of the east of Indian states does not have a pipeline crossing. And to put this in right perspective, CGD is a secondary market. CGD, the city gas net distribution, is a secondary market. It is nearly impossible to lay economically a pipeline only for CGD distributions because the quantity used in India is very less, and not because that it is less. We don't want to use gas because the consumption in this country is less because it is being used only for the purpose of cooking and little bit of water heating. Anywhere else in the world, like in the cooler countries, like Switzerland, Germany, Canada, US, in the northern part of US, the consumption in the household is much higher because they use for heating. In India, it is only used for cooking and maybe some small quantity of water heating. So the quantity used is very less. So it is near impossible to lay pipeline, cross-country pipelines only for CGD. It has to be anchor load has to be there. An anchor load normally is considered in this country thus far as power and fertilizers and nobody else. Then with the lower consumption of gas in fertilizer and power because of subsidies issues and because of power cost and other things, so that reduces the load. And obviously because the pipelines are not there, so rollout of the CGD gets less. The fact of life is that we have 62 cities, what Mr. Monti has just mentioned, but it could have been much more had the distribution would have been much larger. Second thing is, which is most intriguing is that city gas distribution is basically a small time, instead of large wholesaler, is a small wholesaler. So he is not the end user of the product. The CG entity is not the end user of the product. But in the present scenarios, the transmission companies and the gas sellers, there is very little flexibility for the CDG entities. They are using those contracts which are for the end users. So that creates a lot of problem for the CGD entities. Similarly, I just saw in the previous presentation wherein the taxes have to be rationalized. It is very surprising. You buy a diesel dispenser in this country, it has got lesser excise than you buy a CNG dispenser in this country. Isn't it? It's crazy. So taxation has to be rationalized. The polluting fuel has to pay more, and even import duties on those should be more than the import duties on the cleaner fuels. So I'm just quoting this example because I know this for ages we have been trying to say that if you import a CNG dispenser or a excise duty on CNG dispenser should be lesser than the excise duty on a diesel dispenser. And the biggest thing is, this is the whole concept of demand and supply scenario. The demand of medium and small scale industries are hardly considered anywhere. Because the transmission companies take power load, fertilizer load, and CGD load somewhere, but beyond CGD and beyond transmission system, there are whole lot of industry which are on medium and small scale. They consume less than 50,000 and more than 10,000, so they are in that range. And that demand is not catered by anybody, and those units are using sizable quantity of gas and they are available. So now how do you nurture growth? So you have to use gas over oil, so gas has to be made more lucrative, increase consumption there. Flexibility in the contracts. You see, end user contracts are one, but if it is not an end user contract, then there has to be some flexibility over overdrawal or less drawal and things like that. So there has to be flexibility on them. Then taxation has to be rationalized to that effect. Mr. Monty also mentioned, and otherwise also you just see, to encourage gas over the liquid fuels or solid fuels, this amount of, if you see the economic cost of it, I'm not saying apple to apple cost, if you see the economic cost of it, gas is much cheaper on economic cost. So the taxation has to be rationalized on that, and whole lot of focus needs to be given to small and the medium scale industries. And medium and small scale industries, the biggest trouble is that they use those fuels such as furnace oil, coal and others. To switch them over, some sort of incentive has to be given to them. As I said, on policy and regulation intervention part of it, fundamentally we have to develop a master plan for India as to how the pipelines network should be, and accordingly then it should be called that these pipelines are up for bidding and somebody can bid. Instead of patches, the pipelines are being built and then connect them later. It's ideal that we do a planning that 2020, 2050, how my network should look like in this country, what we want. I'm not saying who should do it. It can be Niti Aayog, it can be Planning Commission, or it can be Ministry of Petroleum, or it can be PNGRB. Who does it? It is immaterial. But there has to be a master plan, and according to the master plan, the construction or the award of work should be taken care of. The whole lot of talk was there on PPP and VGF and things like that. All that is needed or not needed depending upon the areas we are going to go in. And until we plan the whole thing, then only the rest of India or other parts of India will get gas and rollout will be possible. Second thing is, technically today most of the pipelines are on open access, technically. But practically it is not. So we have to develop autonomous, independent, unbundled composition. Absolutely unbundled. There has to be pipeline and marketing to be unbundled in the transmission system, and open access should be available at will, and they have to use it that way. Otherwise, whatever transmission system we build, it will not work. And nowhere it has worked in the world. And if you see most of the developing countries or developed countries we talk about, like US, Britain, BG in Britain and others, everywhere it is unbundled. And whenever they have unbundled it, things have started moving faster then. But initially, it was done by the government and later unbundled it. So infrastructure needs to be developed first. I've said faster rollout is only possible after the pipelines are laid, because no pipeline, no transmission pipeline will be laid for CGD networks per se, because the demand on the networks is very, very small. Taxation must reflect with the gas reference. I mean to say that gas is a lesser polluting fuel, so the gas should be given lesser taxation than others in every field of it, not only the gas per se. It needs on the product using, on the equipment which are being bought for use of gas, should be also be less taxed so that it gives incentive for it. And obviously, the medium and small scale industry needs to be given more focus so that they work on it. And that is a huge demand on it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Sharma. Now I invite Mr. Saurabh Kamdar. He is Director, Energy and Natural Resources at CRISIL. Saurabh is an infrastructure sector expert and has led several landmark mandates in energy sector. He has worked closely with government in reforms implementation, with private sector clients in formulation of business plan, and with private equity investors in commercial and financial due diligence. He has advised several clients on policy design, reforms, implementation, strategic business plans, and new business ventures, etc. As an oil and gas sector expert, he has worked across policy, business, and commercial issues, also on one subject with PNGRB recently. And he has actively worked with leading multinational public-private sector clients and global energy majors. He has also worked on consulting assignments across various geographies outside India, including Philippines, Singapore, Nigeria, Bangladesh, to name a few. He has the experience of working in power, renewable energy, and coal sectors. Saurabh holds a BE degree in Information Technology from Mumbai University and MBA Finance from Narsi Munji Institute of Management, Higher Studies, Mumbai. Over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Mohanty. I think the context you set and some of the suggestions Mr. Sharma mentioned are very relevant, and I'll just elaborate on some of the points. It's the last session of the day, so I'll be mindful of the time guidelines, and hopefully I'll try and wrap it up within less than 10 minutes. I think through the day there have been deliberations across the means and modalities to promote the entire natural gas segment, the means to attract private sector investment, the means to plan infrastructure, the means to market development. What I'll really focus on is in terms of what has been the key initiatives on the policy front very recently, and where really the direction of the policy development policy and regulatory development needs to focus on, and I'll briefly touch upon the points which really we as CRISIL think should get some emphasis in the planning aspect. Some of the statistics, I think they have been dealt earlier, so I'll not kind of go deep into the statistics, but one headline message is in terms of the domestic gas production. There has been a correction, and currently we stand at about 1/3 of our total gas supplies being met through imports and 2/3 through domestic gas. At the same time, there has been a kind of a limitation in terms of the availability of domestic gas. The only upside really has been the price correction. The LNG price has become much more affordable than earlier. Dr. Mohanty again mentioned earlier that the way the gas price has been correcting, it really follows crude, and still there's a bit of correction which is expected in the gas prices as in the last few months the oil prices has corrected. But for India as a country, we still remain in a zone where we still keep on deliberating oil versus natural gas. And apart from the price considerations, one really needs to look at the environmental considerations, the sustainability considerations, where on a total economic cost of natural gas really stands at a differentiated stance, and which really needs merit. I think whole lot of dignitaries have spoken on these aspects in terms of the carbon cess or giving due credit to the environmental benefits. Only the modalities and the approach thereby needs to be framed up, and I think that's an important initiative where really one needs to focus attention on. And this is relevant why, if you look at the overall demand chart that really pans out, we are expecting the demand to grow at about to reach about different firms will have different estimates. We have an estimate of about 750 MMSCMD by 2030. Some people have also went ahead and said it might be about 1000 MMSCMD by 2030. So I think from a demand perspective, there's a huge potential where really one needs to step in and bridge the gap, is in terms of whether one needs to really leverage the imports or really kind of leverage the domestic production. Of course, beyond a point, domestic production will have challenges, and what we really foresee is about 2/3 of the entire or not really 2/3, about half of the entire demand is expected to be met by LNG supplies from international markets. So I think it has become all the more important in terms of the planning of LNG terminals, although number of plants, and that's what the lower chart explains, about 65 to 70 million tons of plants have been announced, and one really doesn't know which ones of them will actually become reality, and which ones might be kind of not there. So that's an important planning measure, that we really plan for a lot of infrastructure, both in terms of the midstream and downstream, be it terminals or be it the pipelines or the distribution networks. But when we really see at the track record of at which it is achieved or realized, there's a huge gap, and one really needs to plan the gap. And that's where I'll completely agree with Mr. Sarma's recommendation that there should be an integrated national master plan in terms of how one needs to really plan infrastructure. I think the ministry, PNGRB, will of course have a role in guiding the initiatives towards that, because currently the way either transmission pipelines are awarded or CGD networks are planned are more on the bid route basis. One will really need to create the planning, and somewhere that really creates an overlap in terms of some of the regions having a lot of connectivities and some regions completely remaining unconnected. So I think a national master plan in terms of the midstream and downstream, and which will lay the foundation of an organized planning, is really very important. And I think that's already a high time that one really needs to focus efforts in terms of creating an integrated plan where one really knows what transmission capacity gaps exist, rather than sometimes based on the EOI approach replicating connectivity in an area which is already connected. If we look at some of the critical impediments, I'll just briefly touch upon it. There are, in terms of number of multiple agencies which get involved in the implementation. The approvals, of course, have been a lot of challenge in some of the cases, both for terminals and pipelines particularly. The pricing, the way the pricing frameworks for domestic gas and LNG work, I think while recently there have been initiatives to stabilize and give some predictability to it, but there's much more which can be done around the pricing part of it. inadequate production is again a challenge that we will struggle with. I think apart from the resources that we really have, banking on the global resources is really important, and which is why high imports is a reality and which we'll have to live with. So across the value chain, in terms of whether you look at the policy level things or the planning level things, there are huge initiatives which can be really planned across the value chain, and some of which I'll want to really point out, a couple of which I mentioned earlier, but I want to probably re-emphasize them earlier in terms of the planning initiatives. The EOI approach in terms of at least the transmission pipelines needs to be considered, where you really need an integrated national transmission plan, so that one really plans out and chalks out what really transmission capacity is required. Dr. Mohanty again explained earlier that there is almost about 450 SCMD of capacity and other 500 SCMD of capacity which has been awarded. So some of which might overlap, some of which might become redundant already with the capacities which we are operating at about 20, 30, 40% operating capacities. At the same time, some of the areas will remain completely unconnected. We know of terminals which have come up, but we don't really have pipelines to evacuate the natural gas from terminals, and we have left some of the investments idling there. So I think an integrated master plan for the entire transmission planning is really required, rather than just the current approach of the EOI based approach. Particularly when you look at the CGD segment, I think PNGRB has taken a lot of initiatives, lot of work in terms of awarding cities very frequently in a very organized manner. I think a very consistent approach has been put in place. However, there are of course some few more things which can be done. What is really happening with the CGD bid rounds is, while a number of cities are awarded, we have seen receding interest from bidders in the recent rounds, while number of say 20-30 cities come up in each round, but the interest level in a segment which is really attractive is the real area of concern. Again, you see typically zero bidding in most of the cases, which has now become a norm. So I think structurally competitive bid, and globally people are now realizing that competitive bid or the lowest price discovery is not probably the most efficient means of all award processes. There has to be consideration of other factors in terms of whether really you want to achieve implementation, really you want to provide natural gas access to the people at large and the economy at large, and really somewhere you might need to go and dig out alternate approaches apart from the lowest price discovery mechanisms. And I think that might be really true in case of CGD, that really just bidding it out, I think as a process manager, I think PNGRB has done a great job in terms of coming out with rounds, organized process, and giving out very clear information in terms of CGD bid awards. But at the same time, what really from a investment climate that we exist in, I think we need to really spur investments, spur activity, and there we might need to consider other approach rather than just the lowest tariff based bidding approach which currently prevails. So I think that again is something which might merit consideration. I think on execution level, on other levels, there are huge lot of initiatives in terms of execution plans, execution initiatives which are taking up. But I'll just summarize the few points in terms of the recent announcements and some of the recommendations I'll want to leave the audience with. So a whole lot of initiatives. Again, the ministry particularly has been very active in coming up with pricing initiatives, with gas pooling initiatives, the PPP initiatives, and development initiatives to promote natural gas development in the country through domestic sources. I think all of them are commendable in terms of the market pricing related initiatives, or the HELP initiative, which provides a license, or probably an opportunity to look at all hydrocarbons in one bucket, or the PPP initiatives which are being taken up. I think only some of these needs to kind of really get implemented, and that's where the key suggestions I'll want to in the last part of my presentation want to leave that with the audience. In terms of the regulations, I think one needs to really look at the transmission regulations and look at alternate options rather than one steady stream of pricing. particularly of promotion of natural gas, the usage of waterways or usage of commercial vehicles being converted to natural gas based. I think those are areas where a lot of activity, lot of initial seeding activity which needs to really go on, and that can be a field which can open up a lot of opportunity, at least on the demand side, in terms of looking at waterways being developed on a natural gas based activity, because again the area is environmentally sensitive, and one needs to really channelize efforts if the waterways which are under planning can be developed backed on fuel usage by natural gas. Likewise, on the commercial vehicle usage, one needs to put in infrastructure, because largely the commercial vehicle traffic would be long haul traffic, and one will need to look at how really one provides certainty to access to fuel, and that's where the infrastructure development really needs to come in. Strict monitoring and penalties, I think both for transmission and distribution, it is very important, because the number of bids that we see, number of projects which get awarded, and the number of projects which actually see the realization, it's a bit of concern in terms of the projects which you really see even after say 5, 6, 10 years. Some of the projects still linger, and one really doesn't see them getting implemented. I think as an economy, that's a huge cost of projects not getting implemented, and that's where in terms of the penalties, in terms of the monitoring activities, one needs to streamline activities. At the same time, as I earlier mentioned, in terms of the award framework, one needs to look at means to make these projects viable and attractive for private sector investors, for the global investors and the global energy majors to really come in and not really limit the play to a few select of them, and really need to open up the field to larger players rather than restricting it to the lowest tariff bids. In terms of clearances, in terms of facilitating clearances, facilitating multiple agencies being involved in the entire process, I think there the government has a bit to do in terms of facilitating a common window for clearances and facilitating rationalization of taxes, which was again discussed earlier, so I'm not probably touching upon that in detail. The last area is, while government has recently come across with a huge slew of measures in terms of market pricing, market linked pricing, or formula based pricing, but I think somewhere in the mid to long term, one will need to look at channels where the free market pricing can be encouraged, which will work both for the midstream and the upstream companies, where you really want to get into deregulation of pricing and let market discover the prices through a modality or through a very transparent hub, which in ways is happening in power sector, where and which has worked in favor of power sector. The short-term power prices get governed by the power exchange, which is a bid-based platform, and which is a price discovery platform. I think at some point in time, even the natural gas sector might want to look at a pricing mechanism which is more open, more transparent, and more market-based rather than a regulated mechanism. So I think I'll leave some of these points for further deliberations, and I'll be happy to clarify on one-on-one, but in terms of tariff regulation, in terms of pushing some of the demand measures, in terms of having penalties for non-compliance to implementation of projects, or having a single window clearance or a hub-based pricing, I think these are some of the measures I'll want probably as suggestions on this platform. Thanks.
First of all, for sticking to the time, as also giving a very good, framework of both medium-term and long-term recommendations. Now, I invite Mr. Ravindra Agrawal, Director, GSPL, SGL, and GIGL. He is currently Executive Director, Gas Business of GSPC Group, and he is associated with this group since 1999. Before joining GSPL, Mr. Agrawal was with Gujarat Gas Company Limited, GGCL, for a period of 3 years. He has been associated with the natural gas industry for close to 20 years and has considerable experience in LNG sourcing, natural gas marketing and transportation, contract management, gas pricing, and transportation tariff models. Mr. Agarwal has been instrumental in setting up gas trading business of the company, including sourcing of LNG from international markets, business development, risk management, managing JV companies involved in gas transmission and CGD projects. He has spearheaded the team involved in execution of long-term SPA with British Gas, negotiating LNG terminal access agreement, and many other host of things. He holds a degree in electrical engineering from Malviya National Institute of Technology, Jaipur, and has done Masters of Business Administration in Finance from Devi Ahalya University, Indore. Mr. Agarwal.
Thank you, Chairman. First of all, I would like to thank Indian Oil for inviting me to make this presentation. Before I start my presentation, I will seek immunity from Mr. Mohanty being the regulator, and that's why this disclaimer that the views expressed here are my personal views and not of the company. And secondly, since this is the last session, there is a risk of some amount of repetition, but that's unavoidable. And some of the things which I am going to mention, Mike mentioned during his presentation about what has happened in Gujarat. So my presentation is actually in two parts, and the first part is about what we have done in Gujarat in terms of infrastructure development. The second part is about the impediments which we really need to deal with. So I'll start with a brief introduction of GSPC Group. GSPC Group is present in entire gas value chain. We have more than 30 blocks. We market gas in 9 states, and this year our average sales have been around 13.8 MMSCMD. We have imported around 2.6 MMTPA of LNG this year. We have Gujarat State Petronet Limited as the gas transmission company in the group, which owns Gujarat gas grid of around 2,500 kilometers. And we are the second largest gas transmission company both in terms of network length and the volume of gas that we transport. Our group also have Gujarat Gas, which owns the gas distribution network of more than 20,000 kilometers, and it operates around 260 CNG stations. Gujarat Gas is India's largest gas distribution company. We have also promoted 1.2 gigawatt of gas-based power generation capacities in Gujarat, and currently we are setting up LNG terminal in Mundra in joint venture with Adani, which is of 5 million ton and is going to start operation in 2017. Other than that, we are working on two projects which are named GIGL and GITL. These two companies are the joint venture with Indian Oil Corporation, where Indian Oil Corporation owns 26% equity, and HPCL and BPCL each owns 11% and GSPL owns 52%. These two companies are developing 4,000 kilometers of pipeline network which will traverse through 9 states and cover more than 60 districts. So it's a fairly large project which we are going to start construction this year. So just before I get into the presentation, so this is where Gujarat was, and I think a lot of you must be familiar with the map of Gujarat. And in 2001-2, there was one red pipeline which is of GAIL, famous HBJ pipeline. There was a small green pipeline which was the Gujarat gas pipeline, and a small blue pipeline you can see is a 14-kilometer pipeline developed by GSPL. And there was city gas distribution in Surat and Bharuch, and to some extent by Vadodara Municipal Corporation in Vadodara. So there were 2 districts out of 33 that has city gas distribution when we started our journey. Now this graph kind of summarizes our journey. So in 2001, when we actually started implementing GSPL, which is the Gujarat gas grid, there was a lot of uncertainty about gas supply, which we always have, except for now when the LNG price has really gone down and the regas capacities are being created. There was uncertainty on demand, and of course pricing was always an issue. So initial years were really very difficult, and it took us some time to really start gathering the momentum. So we started with 14-kilometer pipeline, and in 4 years we could reach 227 kilometers of pipeline. And incidentally, our initial 200-300 kilometers of pipeline was running parallel to GAIL's HBJ pipeline. So you can imagine the kind of resistance we would have faced, because it was being called a duplication of existing infrastructure. Well, that's how it started, because all the gas sources were in South Gujarat, and obviously the pipelines would have to start from South Gujarat, where the gas sources are. But fortunately, in those days there was no PNGRB Act, and therefore no litigation, and we could not go to jail. Although all our pipelines were called illegal for almost a decade, till PNGRB came and authorized us. So we are really thankful to PNGRB for that. Well, then the pipeline implementation started gathering its pace, and 2004-5 GAIL developed DVPL-1, which was along with the commissioning of PLL Dahej terminal. And we started seeing emergence of new gas sources, which we actually never thought of when we started implementing the pipelines. So we have then seen Hazira LNG starting its operation in 2006, and then GAIL developed DUPL pipeline. I'll show it on a map, and you will see all these pipelines were running parallel to each other. So what we did was we created a parallel pipeline in the beginning, and there were 3 more parallel pipelines created by GAIL subsequently. And so the theory of duplication is something is actually unavoidable. And to some extent, you will always see some duplication when you are going to create such large infrastructure. And then we saw Reliance D6 gas and PLL expansion sometime in 2009-10. We ran out of capacity. We had to put our first loop line. And again we ran out of capacity, and 2010-11 we had to put another loop line. And then it was followed by a loop line which GAIL did, which is called DVPL2. So therefore, when we started with so much of uncertainty and we didn't know where the gas will come from, as we started implementing the pipeline, actually the availability of gas and demand surpassed our expectations which we initially had. So today Gujarat is the only state which has a statewide gas transmission infrastructure. In early 2000, there was some rudimentary gas transmission infrastructure which was available, which was not enough to meet the demand of gas in the state of Gujarat. And we focused on creating demand. So we actually never followed demand as far as our Gujarat pipelines are concerned. And we took huge risk by making investments in the new markets, which is basically northern Gujarat and western Gujarat. In 2000, there were a lot of stranded capacities in power, fertilizer, and large industrial units. The gas grid led to revival of these plants and switching of these plants from costlier fuels to natural gas. Mr. Gupta is on dais, and you know how his plant, which was on naphtha, got converted on gas on the strength of this pipeline. So what this pipeline has done, it has monetized domestic gas fields like Hazira, Lakshmi, Gauri, and even recently North Tapti. It helped in commercialization of Hazira LNG terminal. We could develop CGD network in 25 districts out of 33 in Gujarat, including the rural regions, because of this pipeline. And we are the only pipeline company which, even before the regulator came, started offering open access. Even today, more than 60% of gas that we transport is not supplied by us or any one of our group companies. And it actually helped the customers to actually decide their suppliers and get competitive gas prices. So from 2001 and 2, by 2007 and 8, our network expanded to more than 1,000 kilometers. The CGD network in Gujarat was in 13 districts out of 33. So the landscape started changing. It took some time, and then now, so the landscape has completely changed. Except for some districts on the outer side, entire Gujarat has gas grid. We have 2,540 kilometers of pipeline. We are in 26 districts. And the CGD network is there in 25 districts. The shaded are the one which have recently been bidded out by PNGRB and would see the intensive infrastructure development in coming years. But the gas is there. Some stations, CNG stations are all still there. So I'll just compare that before the regulator came in, we developed 3 GAs in 1 year in Gujarat, and that is in 2006. In 2007, we developed 6 GAs. So we could develop 9 GAs in 2 years. In last 8 years, we have actually 6 operational GAs out of the bidding. So I think this, I am sure the balance will tilt other way with the aggressive bidding which has been started, but so far this is where we are. If you just look at some more details, so there were 32 CGDs, GAs which were there before PNJB started CGD bidding. They commenced bidding in 2009. They proposed 243 GAs to be bid out. So far, they've invited bids for 89 GAs in 8 years. And we'll see that the 6 rounds which have been conducted, the initial euphoria has died. We are seeing that in round 4, 5, 6, there are large number of GAs which are not attracting any bid. And the number of GAs which are getting awarded are also less. So if you see round 5, out of 20 GAs, only 6 got awarded. In round 6, out of 34, only 20 have received the bids. So I think there is something amiss. Of course, all of us will have to figure out what is it, but there is something amiss. Because there are no takers for large number of GAs, and which means there are many areas that will be left without any development. And I think there is no proposal on the table to attract investment in these areas. So you have NELP, then you have HELP. There are a lot of road shows which are conducted to attract investment in ENP. Well, I hope we would see something similar to this in CGD bidding. Maybe there would be some more interest if the awareness is created. Now I just move to the pipeline infrastructure evolution in the country. So we actually had around 6,000 kilometers of pipeline in 1995. In 2000, GSPL started implementing some pipelines, and the network started growing. By 2015, 2005, we have more than 8,000 kilometers of pipeline. And then Government of India came up with a pipeline policy, which was to promote investment in infrastructure. And GAIL, IOCL, RGTL actually developed several pipelines in this period. And the network actually then increased from 8,000 to 13,000 kilometers. Post that, I think PNJRB has conducted bidding for more than 9,000 kilometers of pipeline. The progress in last 5 years has been really very slow, less than 3,000 kilometers of pipeline. And we expect that all these bid out pipelines would be commissioned by 2018, which would take this network to something around 25,000 kilometers in next few years. Now, if you compare it with what has happened in China in the similar time frame, well, they had a network of around 10,000 kilometers in 2000, and which is now 5 times. They have more than 55,000 kilometers of pipeline network. So I think energy scenario, we had heard that India is consuming only 7% of natural gas as the primary energy fuel. And this is partly due to the pipelines. We still have only 16,000 kilometers of pipeline. Compare it with US 480,000 kilometers of pipeline and China 50,000 kilometers of pipeline. So with increase in economic growth, India has immense potential to have energy consumption growth. The share of natural gas consumption can definitely increase, provided we have more pipelines. And I think that's the important thing. Well, this is about pipelines and CGDs where our progress has been really slow, but it's not so pessimistic if we see other sectors. In telecom, we are the second largest telecom system in the world. The subscriber numbers have increased from 28 million in 2000 to 962 million in 2014. If you look at electricity, we have 288 gigawatt of installed capacity. We are the 5th largest producer of electricity in the world. If you look at road, we have 4.87 million kilometers of road network, and which is world's second largest network. And even in aviation and airports, we are the 9th largest market. So I think we have done well in many of the infrastructure sectors. It may not be enough, but compared to that, I think in gas, we are lagging, and we are lagging seriously. Another interesting example, so if you look at LNG import infrastructure, so first terminal was commissioned in 2004 by Petronet LNG with a 5 million ton capacity. By 2009, this capacity increased to 15 million ton, which was primarily Shell Ajira LNG terminal and Petronet LNG terminal in Dahej. And this has then increased to 22.5 million ton in 2013. And by 17, with the commissioning of Mundra LNG terminal and PLL expansion, the capacity will increase to 35 million ton, which would go up to 45 million ton with the commissioning of NOR and FSRU at Jafrabad. So LNG, where there is no regulation involved, there is no licensing, no bidding, the pricing is free, the development is happening based on the market conditions, and attracting private sector participation in a limited way. So this is another story, interesting thing in gas itself. So what are the issues? So one of the issues is lack of synchronization. Pipelines are laid, CGDs are not there. We have many examples. Dabhol Bangalore is there. The pipeline was done long back. Some of the GAs have been bid out in last round. The infrastructure development is predominantly by PSUs. And if PSUs are only going to bid, then why not nominate 92% of gas pipeline infrastructure is developed or being developed by PSUs. So is it a case of premature competition for award of pipeline? And then we have regulator itself mired with legal issues, PSUs in court against each other for award of these pipelines and licenses. And there are some issues with bidding model itself. The focus is solely on tariff. Pricing is the only focus area. And there is no assurance for minimum returns. So there is lack of incentive. And then we all talk about monopoly is bad. I agree it's bad. But at least to develop the infrastructure, it may not be so bad. And then the core issues like open access, affiliate code are still inadequately addressed. And I think a lot of speakers have spoken about that. Some of the other issues are PNGRB is only a midstream and downstream regulator. It does not have control on supplies upstream. They have no conformity to market demand, and the risk of market is entirely with the investors. And there is no mitigation mechanism in place. Tariff is a bidding parameter, it's predetermined for 25 years. There is no review mechanism during the 25 years, even if market conditions change. So the tariff policy is not aligned with the utility business. For the pipelines which are pre-existing, before PNGRB came in, there is a model, tariff model, which is akin to utility business. There is a minimum return assured, but bid out pipelines have to survive on their own. And there is a lack of financial support except for that PPP model being tried out based on the VGF. So just compare pre-regulated market-based development led to regional concentration of network, ignored further markets. There was a freedom in pricing. Pricing or tariff was never a bone of contention as far as I know, but access was. And there was no restriction on timelines. Post-regulated era, upfront commitment of length and capacity. While there is a delay in getting permissions, approvals, which I think everybody is aware of, there is a heavy emphasis on tariff, while access issues still remain unresolved. There is a non-evaluation of regulations with market dynamics. So the market is changing. While few years back there was a lot of interest in pipeline CGD, it's not there anymore. So few more minutes. 1 minute? Okay. And we believe that there is a weak shareholder consultation on these regulations. So I think one of the important things which I would like to mention is that who should be the licensor, regulator or government? Well, if you look at various other countries, how infrastructure is developed, it was government which gave licenses. It was government which provided all kind of support. As recently, in Italy, for LNG terminal development, they identified it as a project for energy security. And the government has promised to grant 64% of regulated income for the life of project for development of this LNG terminal. So in India, if you look at government is licensor for many sectors, like telecom, electricity, road, and government has responded to change in market conditions by providing stimulus. So they have provided equity in roads recently, which is a hybrid model. They provide fiscal incentive in several sectors. In power sector for UMPP, they have provided pre-project clearances. And that's how they have actually promoted some of these developments. What government can do for pipeline is they can provide viability gap funding, they can provide pricing freedom, they can tag along CG development rights along with the pipelines. They can levy fee on domestic gas price for development of infrastructure. And the schemes like Bharat Nirman or JNNURM, which are being used in road sector for developing network in the rural area as well, can be similar scheme can be there for city gas distribution development pan India and particularly for rural areas. And the subsidies commensurate to LPG can be leveraged for development of PNG sector. So I think there are certain things which we really need to do. So I think that in conclusion, I would say that we have a major issue of what to regulate and how much to regulate. And we must recognize that even the best practice regulation, one size does not fit all. There is need for suitable incentive to promote such capital intensive projects. We need to involve multiple players, only PSUs cannot do it. Government support is required for permissions, clearances, ROU, and which is a state subject. I think we must allow pricing freedom, and the regulatory intervention should be only when there is supernatural profit. So I think light-handed regulation is the need of our if we really want to push development of infrastructure in the country. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Agrawal, for really giving a broad canvas of regulatory processes. I would have loved to continue this discussion. Probably it would take half a day, the kind of issues that he has brought in. I mean, he was just putting a bullet point, but I could understand that each of these issues are so interesting, so challenging. One could have a very intensive discussion with the kind of experienced panels we have here. So we'll have another occasion, but I think our experts will carry presentation. Now I have a real challenge, like like regulator always face the challenge. I have a challenge how to complete with two of my co-panelists. So I would request Mr. Gupta that I mean, not really elaborating on basic indicators, but if there is some additional issues which he will certainly have, suggestions, recommendations, we would really be happy. Mr. Gupta is Chief Operating Officer, Lanco Kondawali Power Limited. So it's good that we have somebody from the consumer side. We had a Gujarat, scenario. I forgot to tell you that Gujarat is one state. In fact, the CGD penetration, they are comparable with the global standard. If you look at the entire landscape, including IGL, MGL, Gujarat is the only state, some of their CGDs have reached almost 30% of total households in the area. 30%, 25%, 20%. One or two are lagging, but overall they have really achieved, and he has explained why Gujarat today, provides those valuable indications how to build a vibrant gas sector. Mr. Gupta is a graduate in electrical engineering and holds a master's degree in business administration with specialization in finance, a lot of finance experts. He has over 35 years of experience in power sector, which is would really come to know about power sector. He has worked in NTPC, the largest power producer in India, and PFC Limited, the largest financier in the power sector. He had wide exposure to multinational companies like PowerGen UK, China, Light and Power, Hong Kong. He also has rich knowledge in preparation of DFRs, study of power project feasibility, preparation of finance. No wonder that he has so much of rich experience. Having worked on both on the generation side as well as on the financing side. He is also an expert in operational performance, monitoring and reporting for management controls and generation cost optimization, etc. He has been working with Lanco, one of the largest infrastructure company in India, as COO since 2006. Mr. Gupta.
Thank you, sir. Good evening. I convey my thanks to IOCL for inviting me to this conclave. My task is difficult because this is one of the last session and I'm practically the last speaker except Mr. Deshpande. So I'll keep my presentation as small as possible. In India, what we have already told in the morning, that our share of gas is only 7 to 9%, whereas in the world it is almost 24%. And our energy mix, I'll skip the line. Fuel mix again, we are predominantly depending on coal, and our hydro and natural gas portfolio is very, very small as compared to coal. And this is not going to change in the near future because of the availability of gas, which is stranded for quite some time. And now we see some ray of hope because of the LNG prices coming down. In the morning, we had a session called Availability and Affordability. Earlier, we were struggling, all the gas-based power projects, because of non-availability of gas. And now, we were trying to struggle with affordability of gas. So, if the international prices are coming down, and we see that this may become an affordable fuel for us, this will be a good fuel for us in the near future. We have about 27,000 megawatt of gas-based power, and unfortunately it is not operating as it would have been. There are 14,000 megawatt capacity which is getting gas to the tune of 25 to 30%, whereas about 10,000 megawatt is the capacity which is not getting any gas at all. You will not find any country where 27,000 megawatt is not operating, and at the same time we are complaining that we are power shortage. So this is the dichotomy we are working with. Government of India realized that yes, we have to do something for these gas-based projects. Recently, in the last year, they came out with a scheme where they said that we will give you certain concessions, we will waive some certain taxes and duties to make the LNG affordable. To some extent, it worked. We had 3 phases of that scheme. In the first phase, we had some gas which was almost 9 MCMD of gas which was available. And in the second phase, it came down to, it increased to 13 MCMD, and now third phase of bidding has happened, which is 8 MCMD. This LNG is being provided by Messrs. GAIL based on the certain concessions and waivers which I have told, in which there is a waiver of 50% of transportation tariff, waiver of service tax, waiver of custom duty, waiver of marketing margin to the extent of 75%, like that. There are so many concessions given by all the stakeholders. Even then, what is happening is only 4,000 to 5,000 megawatt is operating at 30% capacity, which allows us to service only our debt component, not even this repayment of debt. There is no ROE to the promoters. So in this scenario, the gas-based projects are operating, and I am standing on behalf of all the gas-based projects here. So what we are saying is that since the availability of LNG through GAIL is limited because of certain capacity constraint and what GAIL can bring from their terminal. First and foremost, policy initiative and the regulatory reform which we want is that if these concessions are given to these power projects, and power projects are allowed to import gas directly from various sources, I think we can operate these plants at least at 50 to 60% rather than struggling at 30%. This is one initiative which we want. Second thing is, sir, open access is a dream. We have been told that the open access in the pipelines will be given on non-discriminatory basis. But so far, we have not got any kind of open access, especially in the Reliance pipeline, which is running east to west. And all the power plants in the Andhra Pradesh are struggling to get gas from west coast, but for this open access, we are unable to get it. Hopefully, with the budget notification on the CST clarification of tax, this open access may become a reality. Second policy changes which we are looking for is that gas-based generation should be included in the renewable power obligation of the DISCOMs. So this certain amount of gas-based power should be purchased by all the gas-based, all these DISCOMs. Then a separate procurement guideline for only gas-based projects. Today, when the DISCOMs are buying power on a competitive basis, they call a tender, and irrespective of fuel, irrespective of source of generation, you have to quote a price, and that price is constant for 1 year to 3 years. Now, for a gas-based project, until the gas cost is passed through, it is impossible to give a 3-year price. So this is another suggestion, that there should be a separate guideline and tendering documents for short-term and medium-term purchase of gas-based power. Third is the regasification charges and the pipeline tariff. Again, they are very, very high as compared to the international standards. And a recent increase in the pipeline tariff for the KG Basin network is another example of high cost of tariff for this pipeline. The tariff has been increased from 5 rupees per MMBTU to 46 rupees per MMBTU. Of course, it is only for 1 year, but we fail to understand how the tariff can go from 5 rupees to 46 rupees. And last thing is that these gas-based projects, instead of running them on a continuous basis, because it is a costlier power, we feel that this power can be used for peaking as well as for integration of the renewable power into the grid, because renewable power is not available throughout the year, throughout the day. So how to integrate into the grid? Gas-based projects can play a major role in integrating this power into the grid. So these are the policy initiatives and changes we are looking for from. Thank you.
Now I call upon the last speaker, quite relieved, although we are overshooting a little the timeline given to us. But anyway, the discussion has been really stimulating. Mr. R.N. Deshpande, he is ED of Nagarjuna Fertilizers and Chemical Limited. He is a postgraduate degree in commerce from Pune University, law from Mumbai University, and a management degree from Jamanlal Bajaj Institute of Management, Mumbai. He has about 30 years of working experience as ED in Nagarjuna Fertilizer Limited, as also advisory in Gujarat State Fertilizer Chemicals Limited and Rashtriya Chemicals and Fertilizers Limited. He has wide experience in finance, taxation and projects. He is a very widely travelled, specialist. Has gone to Oman, UK, France, US, China, Thailand, etc. He has also worked as a consultant in Fertilizer Industries Coordination Committee, which is attached to Department of Fertilizers. Mr. Deshpande.
Thank you, Chairman. Good evening, friends.
We are overshooting the time, sorry.
At the outset, I am thankful to Indian Oil for giving the fertilizer industry this opportunity to express our views and concern on the natural gas issues. The session today is nurturing natural gas policies and regulation, and the theme given to me is natural gas security for fertilizer production. The contribution of fertilizer industry to the food security of India or food grade production is very significant, and because of the fertilizer availability and affordability to the farmer, the food grain production has increased many-fold, four-folds from the 51-52 to 2014-15. And this increase was only possible because there is a substantial increase of fertilizer consumption. This I am saying that because the food security, what we talk of, comes through the fertilizer security, and the fertilizer security will come only when there is natural gas security for the fertilizer production. With this production, now India is second in production and consumption of nutrient nitrogen. Similarly, it is the second in consumption and third in production of PTO5. However, India is very much dependent on all the major fertilizer inputs and even finished fertilizers are very much import dependent. On all the inputs like rock phosphate, sulfur, ammonia, phosphoric acid, natural gas, India is highly dependent. Since now this seminar is related to natural gas, and natural gas is almost 95% is used in the urea, we will only concentrate and focus on the urea fertilizer in this presentation. To give a small snapshot about the fertilizer industry, this is one slide will give you entire gamut of the fertilizer industry. There are about 159 units, 30 producing units for urea, with installed capacity of urea 23 million. 22 million is the production in 2014. Still 8 million was imported, and the import content were about 28% of the availability. The facts about the urea industry is very heavily dependent on subsidy. You may see that the total cost of production of urea, the MRP is only 26% and balance 74% is through subsidy. So the industry is very heavily dependent on subsidy. The industry's position here was, it is the government's prerogative to give subsidies, and government can give subsidies to farmers, but give it directly to the beneficiary, like direct benefit transfer, and let the fertilizer industry sell its produce at its own cost of production. Coming to domestic gas NG supply, it is far below even whatever prescribed by the government. I will come to the regulation policy separately. It may be seen that last 3 months data, which is from Petroleum Planning Analysis Cell, that the imported gas supply to total consumption was almost, it is going from 42% to 51%, and again it is almost 50-50 ratio. It means whatever requirement is there, only 50% domestic natural gas is available, balance 50% is used as a imported LNG. As I mentioned that urea import or India is already about 8 to 9 million tons of urea is imported annually. But if you look at this slide differently, that if you say that for 15-16 estimated production will be 24 million and the gas requirement in average MMSCMD is 46, and the average yearly domestic gas availability is only 25, it means about only 13 million can be produced from domestic gas, and about 12 million will have to be produced from the imported gas, that is the LNG. So 8 million import plus 12 million is almost 20 million India is depending on the import, either through a direct import of urea or from LNG source. To give in this very brief about rationale for gas allocation for urea sector, this gas allocation policies right from beginning has considered as a premium source, as a fuel and feedstock. The sectoral priority allocation for domestic gas was therefore formulated in the larger public interest. An objective of policy are to meet gas requirement that is affordability and availability. And fertilizer, within the fertilizer, urea was given the highest priority in the gas consuming sector. So all the policies, whether it is APM, when administrative price mechanism was there, when gas linkage committee was giving this gas allocation, or non-APM, pre-NELP or NELP had this discretion. So see, these are some of the major important policy decision. Because of time constraint, I will not go into each of the policy decision. The only I will like to invite your attention to this EGOM decision on August 2013, where it has said that 31.5 mmCD gas of domestic gas should be given to the fertilizer industry. Here earlier it was only KG-D6, now 31.5 was a domestic gas, it was KG-D6 from other sources of domestic gas. And it was stated that even if there is a shortfall there, the new sources, the gas should be given first to the fertilizer industry. And we find that from the earlier slide that there are about 9 million shortfall of gas in domestic, because current supply is between 23 and 24, and the minimum requirement stipulated was 31.5. I am saying that here again the urea needs for the food security. Manufacturing urea natural gas is used both in a feedstock, so it used as chemical properties of the gas and also fuel value. So there is a logic more rational in giving natural gas to urea. Subsidy payments are involved, so cheaper APM gas allocation makes the subsidy payment less, and of course environmental reason. With these policies over the year, the government has mandated that all these urea units should be switched over. Most of the urea units, which were about 8 units in naphtha and 6 units in fuel oil LSHS, to gas, and most of the units are switched over to gas, and currently only a small capacity of 1.5 million, only 3 units are waiting to switch over from naphtha to gas, and waiting for connectivity and availability of the gas. So because of time, I will not go into the gas pooling mechanism in detail, but gas pooling was a reform in urea sector, is the first step of reform to bring uniformity within the sector. So with this gas pooling plus the domestic gas natural pricing guidelines in October, these are the prices which notified pool prices vis-a-vis notified domestic gas prices, and you will see that the difference considering the 50-50 ratio imported versus domestic, the RLNG price is 2.5 times costlier than the domestic gas price. And to give an economics is that one increase in $1 price of cost MMBTU of a gas, the cost of production and subsidy of urea increases by ₹1,600. This is because MRP is statutorily fixed, and the company has to sell the urea at the MRP. Any increase in gas price has to be passed through subsidy, and government has to pay through subsidy because MRP has been statutorily fixed. So this translates $1 into the government subsidy outgo of 3,590 crores. So my summary and conclusion is that the highest sectoral priority to fertilizer in domestic allocation policy should continue. Whatever the policies framework are going to change, we understand that the sectoral priority is likely to be changed, or the gas allocation policy is likely to change. Our view in the industry that should be continue in spite of the gas pooling. Even the gas pooling is there, the domestic gas will bring the gas pooling price lower, and the affordability of fertilizer to farmer is also an issue. So gas-based urea plants to be given top priority in allocation in supply of domestic gas. Urea sector should supply domestic gas as per requirement without any cap on domestic supply. The today's cap of 31.5 should also be reviewed, because the urea industry today is consuming about 46 MMSCD gas, but in coming 2-3 years, with the revival which government is doing of a sick industry of more 3 to 4 units in FCI and HFC, 3 units of naphtha which is going to be converted, and other expansion, the gas requirement will be over 60 MMSCD, and with this 24 MMSCD of domestic gas, the gap will be widened very much, and the fertilizers, particularly urea, will become very costly. So therefore, our industry position is that urea sector should be supplied with levelized delivered gas price about 5.5 MMBTU, so that it has a level playing field with the competing imports of urea. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Deshpande, for really giving us a flavor of, fertilizer industry's interface with gas. In summing up, I'll just take 1 minute because I have a duty to sum up. Although I have given indications at the end of each speaker's deliberations, that this is really a well-made session, in the sense that IndianOil has been able to brought in both sellers and buyers, and at the end of 1.5 hours deliberations, we have really, as a regulator also, I could feel that we have really crossed so many issues, so many ways, the entire landscape has been brought before you, starting with Mr. Rajiv Sharma giving you how there is a kind of a golden age, enticing us to grab it and to our own benefit. But there are slips and challenges in between, which was further elaborated by our CRISIL expert, and finally the micro issues and regulatory issues which was brought in by Mr. Agarwal. So at your leisure time, probably, I hope these slides will be given to the delegates, and when you go through, you'll find that each of these issues they have brought in has a very, very lengthy and very intense kind of, issues involved. And then we have a presentation by, on power sector and fertilizer sector. Both sectors are, as you know, constitute the basic anchor load for gas sector. Now, may I now invite the questions. Before you put your question, please let us know who are you, and keep it to the point, because we are already short of time. It is already 6:45 probably. So questions, please. And you also address to the panelist you want to answer. Any questions? So this shows that everybody is fully satisfied, They have really, because this is the end of the today's sessions. Therefore, you have already asked those questions in the previous session. So over to the.
Thank you so much, sir. It indeed was a very well-rounded session, and each speaker packed in a lot of pertinent points in their respective presentations. Thank you so much for this last session. And I now request the session chair, Dr. Mohanty, to kindly give mementos to our speakers. We begin with Shri Rajiv Sharma. A memento for Shri Saurabh Kamdar. Shri Ravindra Agarwal. Shri Rakesh Kumar Gupta. And Shri R.M. Deshpande. EDIC Gas, IndianOil, Shri G.K. Satish to kindly come up on the dais and present a memento to the chair for this session, Dr. B. Mohanty, for steering the session smoothly and for his valuable input to the session. And now it's time for a group photograph of all the session speakers, the chair, and EDIC Gas, IndianOil. Thank you so much, gentlemen.